Overnight, a top North Korean official reportedly on his way to the U.S. to work on reviving the June 12th summit.
This president, what he's been able to do in such a compressed short amount of time is nothing short of historic and remarkable.
A desperate search intensifying for a National Guardsman swept away in a flash flood. Edison Herman's last seen trying to help a woman when he fell into the water.
Congressman Adam Schiff, he said that Republicans, anyone who supports this president, he called them bums. And then his colleague doubled down on that.
You're actually worse than bums if you're not willing to stand up to a president.
President Trump up and tweeting today about the reports the FBI put a spy in his campaign.
The question is, did they have a legitimate basis to be using informants?
7-year-old Christian Jacobs. He led me to his dad's grave, and we paid our respects together.
It's going to be something to look back with Christian, and he is just going to be so proud when he gets older and he fully understands it all.
I hope they realize they have to play out the rest of their career. That's going to be like the Roxanne for a Sting. You'll never have a concert and not hear that.
Do you know why they're famous?
Nope.
Brian
great song.
Brian
no, I
Kilmeade.
actually have heard that, Brian. You brought them on the show, and now they're famous.
Right, I told them not to break up. And I give myself full credit for the fact that they really hit hyperspeed after they left our show.
Yep. And then Sean Hannity uses them for his radio show. That's his song, the entrance song.
Is it really?
Yeah, because of you.
Oh, that's true. I think on some level, if you want to jump to those conclusions, I so thoroughly support you, Angel.
Any fame I ever get in my life, I'm going to credit you for as well, Brian.
If you don't mind.
I will.
Because many people
We owe it all to Brian Kilmeade.
We do. Even though you mispronounced my last name for 2 years straight.
Did he really?
Yes.
What
Did
did
I
he
really?
call you?
Yeah.
What did I call you?
Hegswather. One time. We can roll the tape if we look. One
Is
time.
that true?
Just one
Well,
time.
one of our correspondents, Brian Yennis, who's worked for us for a long time. Brian had to introduce him last week, and what did you say? Brian Yiannopoulos or something. All right, anyway,
Yes.
let's talk about
Brian, we love you.
We do.
Not yet. No. I know you don't, but I'm growing on you. All right, now let me tell you what's happening.
All right, straight to a Fox News alert on a serious note. A top North Korean official on his way to the United States right now. There he is.
There he is indeed, hopping on a New York-bound flight overnight.
This is exciting because it just shows you that everything is moving forward. Griff Jenkins is live in Washington ahead of the potential summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. But Griff, there's so much more going on than what's happening with this envoy coming here, right?
That's right. Look, there are a lot of rapidly diplomatic advances, and the president is confirming those in a tweet this morning. Just moments ago, he's tweeting this. We have put a great team together for our talks with North Korea. Meetings are currently taking place concerning summit and more. Kim Yong-chul, the vice chairman of North Korea, heading now to New York. Solid response to my letter. Thank you. It follows that video of vice chairman seen there in the Beijing airport. It would be almost 20 years since someone of his stature came to the U.S. Plus, we have that delegation on the DMZ meeting at this hour, led by former U.S. Ambassador to South Korea, Sung Kim, the National Security Council's Director of Korean Affairs, Allison Hooker, and Assistant Secretary of Defense, Randall Shriver. And it's all on the heels of the president's call yesterday. You will recall he talked to Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan, telling Abe that they are in close coordination in advance of an expected meeting between the U.S. and North Korea. So these are all clear signs, Brian, that we are headed towards the final stages of preparations. But earlier on this show, Kellyanne Conway had this to say.
This president, in that letter last week, I thought really got some kinetic energy going. Folks all of a sudden said, wow, this may actually not happen. And if we want it to happen, then we're going to start moving. And ever since then, practically, North Korea, South Korea, and the United States have been making very positive moves. But let's see what happens, as the president says. If he's satisfied, it will go forward.
So one last thing we might see, another meeting between Secretary Pompeo and the North Koreans. Things are moving, guys.
Yeah, delegations are meeting, high-level talks are happening, and the countries that are on the outside seem to be meeting as well, getting their points across before what looks like we're sitting down on June 12th. Thanks, Griff.
Thank you, Griff.
Thank you very much.
President said if not June 12th, then after that, but he did indicate that they are moving forward on this. He has not said that the meeting is a definite, because he canceled it last week, but it looks like they are going to have a meeting at some point.
All you can do is look at the signs and talk about enough on his plate, right? He's trying to get a historic meeting to end a war that's been going on for 70 years on the Korean Peninsula. Peninsula. And he's up tweeting this morning saying, hey, I've got to deal with all this other nonsense while I'm trying to get other things done. He tweeted this just moments ago, the president. He said, sorry, I've got to start focusing my energy on North Korea nuclear. Bad trade deals, VA choice, the economy, rebuilding the military, and so much more. And not on the rigged Russia witch hunt that should be investigating Clinton, Russia, FBI, Justice, Obama, Comey, Lynch, etc. And he had another tweet.
Right, and I will say this. He's talking about denuclearizing the peninsula. That could also mean that we don't fly our nuclear or bring nuclear submarines to the region. Do we not fly over with B-2 B-2 bombers? Do we do that? Do we agree to that? Do we take down 28,000 troops down to 10,000 troops? So these are the things you got to wonder, what are we willing to do?
And China's control of the South China Sea. I mean, they're asserting themselves, with China being with North Korea being the client state of China. What are they going to ask for?
And if they ask for us to pull back, kind of interesting, right? That would let China take over the whole region. Right now, with their belligerent behavior, we have no choice but to be there. Maybe China's saying, hey, I want you to start behaving yourself because we want the U.S. presence out, and then we have to think about that.
So these are like big issues that presidents need to be thinking about, yet the president is forced to deal with the Mueller probe and the Russian collusion stuff.
People are so sick of it all. The president does bring up a good point. North Korea, those are lives. Those are lives that are at stake here. It's definitely much more serious than all of that other junk that's going on in D.C. He also tweeted this: the 13 angry Democrats, plus people who worked 8 years for Obama, working on the rigged Russia witch hunt, will be meddling with the midterm elections, especially now that Republicans, stay tough, are taking the lead in polls. There was no collusion except by the Democrats.
Just think about it. It was Comey leaks because he wanted a special counsel based on a phony dossier. They actually spied on him. Then he hires a bunch of Democrats. The scope of the investigation feels like it's out of control. They're looking into things other than that. You can imagine the frustration. He wakes up, and if you watch other networks, this is what they're talking about. Every little nugget they can.
But you travel the country and they're not. And,
exactly.
And one of the main things, that popped up is that that people don't care as much about the probe, but when they raided Michael Cohen's office, that's when the president began to check out and said, I'm not sitting on my hands anymore. Andrew McCarthy joined us earlier. He's a sober-minded prosecutor who's just looking at this case. And when people bring up spy and informant and what they do, they go to our ideological corners. Andrew McCarthy says, I'm just looking at this investigation, and I'm just wondering, what was going on at the FBI that they thought it was that they would put an informant or spy inside the Trump camp? Was there reason? Listen.
All this talk about the nomenclature is beside the point. The question is, did they have a legitimate basis to be using informants under circumstances where we have a norm in this country against political spying, particularly in connection with elections? Every time they tell us they can't tell us something, they claim it's because of national security. And then when the pressure gets ratcheted up and that stuff gets unredacted, we find out it's got nothing to do with national security. It's that they're embarrassed by what they've done.
Yeah, Brian, that was a great interview. And I also think the fact that we were spying on you for your own good, but we didn't tell you about it. I mean, that to me is the biggest flaw in their argument, is it was for you, but we wouldn't tell you. If it was really for them, you'd say, hey, we think they're probing your campaign. We're going to let you know about it. We're going to find out about it. They never did. Why not?
Right. If they sent someone in to work on the campaign, if that's really what happened, someone embedded with the Trump campaign, and they're trying to figure out whether or not he's colluding with Russia, and they didn't tell him, they said, it's such a spin. It's such a spin because they're saying, we were inside, or we were spying, or we had informants, but it was for your own good.
We love you so much.
Right.
So a couple of things. Marco Rubio on the Sunday show, he said, I talked to the president for about 30 minutes about North Korea and some other things. And Lindsey Graham, who's on our show and moving forward in North Korea, when asked about was there a spy in the campaign, he goes, I haven't seen that yet. And then Molly Hemingway answered directly, as did Mark Meadows yesterday. Marco Rubio is apparently unaware the FBI opened an investigation of the Trump campaign. That's an open secret. They opened an investigation. We've learned last week that through reporting that the Washington Post and New York Times did, that the investigation involved far more surveillance surveillance, then we had information. It wasn't just a wiretap against a campaign aide. You can look at the email communications among FBI directors. And as I said, the first time we saw that in print was about a 4,000-word story in the New York Times that said there was an informant looking into the Trump campaign that talked to Sam Klovitz, Papadopoulos, and Carter Page. And when someone called it a spy, they say they were being inflammatory and inaccurate. That's not really. There was someone there to get information about what the Trump campaign knew.
Proactively reaching out to these staff members, flying them to London, sitting down with them on multiple occasions, and asking them loaded questions. What do you know?
Papadopoulos in that case,
exactly.
right?
What do you know about this? What do you know about that? What do you know about Russia?
Do you have a problem with that? Because there's a difference in a spy being embedded with the Trump campaign or an informant, some guy that's just coming up to his buddies or his campaign people at a bar.
I got a problem with both.
Yes. Yep.
Trying to ask
they
questions.
both feel that they both are seeking the same outcome. Extract information we want that could make them look bad. And then when it wasn't what they wanted, which was Russian collusion, they used it in reverse to leak information, Michael Flynn, all the other nonsense that came afterwards.
Judge Napolitano says in investigations, though, that happens all the time. Police officers or FBI agents will go up to someone who they might be investigating, ask them questions.
But I think it's different because now when the presidency's at stake, I think you should just brief it to him. Meanwhile, 10 minutes after the hour, Julian Milley's got the other breaking news. Hey, Julian.
That's right. Good morning. Following a number of stories. So let's start with this Fox News alert. A possible act of terrorism. This is a live look in Belgium where 2 police officers are shot dead. A gunman attacking them from behind, stabbing them several times before taking their own guns and shooting them. A bystander also shot and killed. The gunman later shot dead by police after taking a woman hostage inside a school. Now, it's unclear if that gunfire was from the initial incident or when police tracked down the shooter. We will keep you posted. Another Fox News alert, a desperate search intensifying for a National Guardsman swept away in a flash flood. Edison Herman last seen trying to help a woman when he fell into the water in Ellicott City, Maryland, and down south subtropical depression, Alberto, turning deadly after making landfall. The 2 journalists you see on your screen were killed when a tree fell on their SUV in North Carolina. The storm is now moving north. The Golden State Warriors are heading back to the NBA Finals. The defending champions winning Game 7 against the Houston Rockets, 101-92. The Warriors will face LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers for the 4th straight year. The finals tip off Thursday night in Oakland. 4th straight year, huh?
I thought going into halftime this was going to be Houston at home.
It's like, can anyone else get into the finals?
I know. Keep doing it over.
They have a controversial coach, right?
Well,
Steve Kerr?
True.
State Warriors.
Made some comments.
Political comments.
Right.
But LeBron, 8 straight years in the NBA Finals, and he's got no one else on his team.
Right.
I mean, there's 4 other players. I don't know who they are.
All right, meanwhile, 12 minutes after the hour.
All right, the left trying to slam President Trump using photos of immigrant detention centers. Only one problem with those photos, they're from 2014 when Barack Obama was the president. Where was the outrage then? Ben Shapiro here to react live.
And Democrats have been slamming the Republicans' tax bill nonstop. But now they're trying to cash in on it. Charles Payne decided to walk up the stairs. All right, many Democrats have long been staunchly against the GOP tax reform bill. None voted for it. But it appears they are the ones now cashing in on it.
Yep. Several blue states are reporting major surges in tax revenue. California at $3.8 billion, higher than original forecasts. New York, $315 million. And even Connecticut raking in $1.3 billion, more than projections.
And California can use that cash. Here to break it down, the host of Making Money on the Fox Business Network. He's in for Varney all this week as well.
Yeah, well, today for sure.
Sorry about that. Charles Payne, great. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You know, it is so amazing. For instance, Jerry Brown, he railed against the tax plan, calling it evil. We know Nancy Pelosi has called it crumbs. But now they're approaching $4 billion they had not projected. This is in the coffers, by the way. This is money that's come in. They had no idea it was going to come in. all because of the new tax plan. And guess what? They're going to put the money to work on things like $300, $400 million to fight homelessness, money to help, to evaluate to mentally ill. So the social construct, the sort of idea that this is only for the ultra wealthy is going to help so many people in the bluest of blue states.
So I understand overall, according to the CBO, the total receipts are up 4% over the first 7 months. And the CBO estimates there were $83 billion over projected amounts of revenue, even though the tax cut happened. Technically, you would think revenue would be down, but the theory is if you give people more of their own money, revenue will grow. So far, that's been the case.
That's called velocity of money, right? So if I get to keep more of what I make, I'll go out and spend it in more places. So I'll buy something from the hot dog guy, then he'll buy something from the hat person, then the hat person will buy something from the newsstand, and the money circulates in the economy rather than going to D.C. and being spent on $5,000 hammers.
Does this have to do with, do you remember when we were talking about tax reform and we said there are some of the blue states, the most expensive states, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, California, those folks are going to see their taxes probably stay where they are or maybe go up?
Well, that's because of the household deductions, but we're also talking about corporations. For instance, Connecticut, that's the home of major hedge fund managers. They've taken in $1.3 billion more this year already than they thought they would. The overwhelming majority of that is because the market has gone up. People rail against, for instance, corporate buybacks. When corporations buy back their stocks, it helps their stock price. When the stock price goes up, it helps the hedge fund managers in Connecticut. Now that the hedge fund managers in Connecticut have this extra money, close to $1 billion, guess what Connecticut's going to do? It's going to keep constructing schools. The same schools that kids will go in and they'll learn that hedge fund managers and lower taxes are evil.
Right.
You're right.
So you have Cisco put $67 billion in buybacks, Amgen $10 billion, and Hewlett Packard $7 billion. But you're saying I'm a shareholder, great. However, what about people that say, why don't you give those people raises? Why don't you give the workers raises?
I just haven't seen anybody picketing, any Cisco workers out in front picketing the company that we're not making enough money. People who work at those corporations make a ton of money. They're the highest paid American workers. They're the highest paid workers in the world. They're not complaining. And by the way, when the company buys back that fund, that means that their retirement is being funded. That means they can retire and they know at 65 they can really go on that trip to Europe. They can really go fishing, that money is secure.
All right.
Because we've seen pensions like that go poof.
Well, not Cisco. We've seen mostly state pensions go poof, right?
Yes.
And we've seen some smaller companies, but these large corporations, most of them are doing the right things when they do this. Most of them,
Filling in for Varney in about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So go get my
check it out. A lot of things going on, especially in Italy, guys.
And we'll do a simulcast, and I'll do it in all Italian.
Okay.
All right, coming up, it's no joke. Liberal comedian Michelle Wolf is back with a new round of attacks against women in the White House. Are these punchlines fair or foul? We'll debate it next.
All right, some quick headlines now. President Trump is headed to the Music City, and he's doing it today. His Nashville, quote, Make America Great Again rally seeks to boost GOP Senate hopeful Marsha Blackburn. Right now, she's in the House. She's running to replace retiring Senator Bob Corker. Hasn't really got much of an endorsement from Corker at all. Meanwhile, country star Trace Atkins will open up the rally. The Trump team says he will set the perfect patriotic tone. He's also going to do the Wounded Warrior event I'll be hosting on Wednesday. Meanwhile, a new poll putting Oprah ahead of Michelle Obama in a hypothetical 2020 run at the White House. The survey shows the media mogul leading President Trump by leading President Trump by 6 points. The former First Lady has a wider margin, but less overall support. Neither is believed to be seriously considering a run. That's just a finer point on that. Hey, Ainsley.
Hey, Brian. Thanks so much. Well, she regretted nothing about her routine at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and now liberal comedian Michelle Wolf is taking it even further in a whole new round of attacks against women in the White House. Listen.
Gina Haspel was sworn in as the first female director of the CIA. My best friend, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, tweeted, any Democrat who claims to support women's empowerment and our national security but opposes her nomination is a total hypocrite. Well, if anyone's an expert on hypocrites, it's Sarah Huckabee Sanders. That was not a looks-based joke. That was about her ugly personality.
Are these punchlines against feminism okay or not okay? Here to debate this is RNC spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany and Fox News contributor Jessica Tarlov. Thanks, ladies, for being with us.
Good morning, Ainsley.
Good morning.
Thanks, Ainsley.
Good morning. Hey, Kayleigh. Kayleigh, I'll start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, Michelle Wolf represents a very angry, militant type of feminism that's very hypocritical. You know, she says she's for women's rights, but yet she tears down women who are on the right. And we see this on the left repeatedly. You know, they talk about breaking through glass ceilings and wanting Hillary to break that glass ceiling. Well, why aren't they celebrating women on the right who have broken through that glass ceiling, like Sarah Sanders, the first mother to stand at that podium, Kellyanne Conway, the first woman to win a presidential campaign, my boss, Ronna McDaniel, a working mother leading the Republican Party. Where are the liberals celebrating these women? They don't. Instead, they tear them down in a malicious, angry, vile way.
You know, she brings up a good point, Jessica. We've heard liberals say there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. Yet you've got this comedian who is bashing her continuously about her looks and her personality. You know, is it a little too much?
The Gina Haspel argument, I think, is a little bit different than Sarah Huckabee Sanders or Kellyanne Conway or women who support the policies of this administration, which are avowedly anti-women. As far as what Madeleine Albright has to say about a special place in hell for women who don't help other women, that's a distortion of her general message and how she used it on the campaign trail for Hillary, where she was talking about the most qualified candidate to be in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That wasn't about voting for Hillary because she's a woman. The truth of the matter is that Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Kellyanne Conway, Kaylee's boss all support policies that hurt women. They don't want to raise the federal minimum wage. 2/3 of people on the minimum wage are women. Rolling back Title X funding, not giving you access to quality, affordable health care. This administration doesn't want to give women choices and control over their own body, and that's why it's okay to attack these women.
Kaylee?
Not okay to attack these women, and we are the party for women. Look, under President Trump, women have a 17-year low unemployment rate. That's extraordinary. Wages are going up for women, making it easier for mothers and families to afford college for their kids. We fight for unborn women, women who are routinely slaughtered with the pro-choice policies of the left. We fight for women, even the most vulnerable among us. We're a party for women, and this is a presidency for women. And folks like Jim Carrey and Michelle Wolf and the Grammys who attack Nikki Haley, it's disgusting. People recognize it, and the Hollywood elite are seen for what they are, which is not in support of conservative women.
Jessica, who's going to watch that show? Who's going to watch this Michelle Wolf on Netflix? It seems.
I'm sure a lot of people are going to watch that show, but she's a comedian.
Negative.
It's her First Amendment right. I mean, we're sitting here talking about this as if this is a politician that got up there and said that. If you guys had any funny comedians on your side, then I'm sure there would be praise for such a show that was talking about the conservative way of life and how great it is. But to Kaylee's point here, when you look at what this administration is doing, rolling back Obama's Fair Policy Acts from 2014 to make sure that women are being paid equally to men, these are not things that are good for women. So just because you have a woman standing up there at the podium doesn't mean that she's making life better for women in this country. And also abroad, slashing funding, international aid that helps women. Look at the global gag rule, access to family planning, contraception, and yes, abortion, which is health care, is something that is good for women all over the world. And this president opposes that, and the women who stand with him do as well.
Okay, Kaylee, last word.
Yeah, you know, you look abroad and the things that have been done. You mentioned funding for women. Ivanka Trump set up a fund with the World Bank to help women globally. There are extraordinary policies for women. I mentioned the unemployment. We can debate this, but let's put the vile comedic jokes aside and let's have a real discussion on the issues, not tear down women on SNL, in this show, and across Hollywood.
But these shows are airing in the middle of the night. They don't affect you. I'm talking about what's happening every day from that podium there. The policies that are being espoused by a president and an administration
that are
historically
affecting
the most
we got to leave it there, girls. We got to leave it there. Thank you, ladies, for being with us.
Thank you.
And you're right. She does have the right to have a show, but we have the right not to watch it. Thanks for being with us. All right. Well, we've been showing you this crazy video, a real-life Spider-Man saving a boy from a window ledge. This morning, we found out where the father was, and you're not going to believe it. Plus, the left trying to slam President Trump using photos of immigrant detention centers. The only problem? The pictures are from 2014 when President Obama was in office. Where was the outrage then? Ben Shapiro joins us on the couch to weigh in next.
All right, back with the Fox News Alert. Israel defending its people with the Iron Dome at it again hours before dropping bombs on Gaza and filling the sky with smoke. The retaliation came after Palestinian militants fired dozens of mortars from the Gaza Strip.
Our own Mike Tobin is live at a kindergarten building where a mortar hit. Mike, good morning.
Good morning, guys. The activity between the Israelis and Palestinian militants is active right now. There are sirens wailing at the northern end of the Gaza Strip, warning of incoming fire. Just a short time ago at my location, about halfway down the Gaza Strip, the red alert went off, and we saw the Iron Dome activate and apparently knock something out of the sky. Now, the Israeli activity has been largely taken the form of airstrikes. Palestinian contact is telling us 3 Islamic Jihad training camps were hit. The Arafat camp in Gaza City, the Malik camp in Deir al-Balah, which is about 2 miles south of the location where I am right now, and at the far southern end of the Gaza Strip, the Fajr camp in Rafah. There was one Hamas camp that was hit. That is the Badr camp in Gaza City. And there are new airstrikes at the northern end of the Gaza Strip. It appears that all the training camps were empty at the time that they were hit. No word on casualties. Now, back out live, I want to show you what the Israeli activity was a response to. This is shrapnel from a mortar that hit here at this Israeli kindergarten. And I can show you some of the impact as we walk around. You can see a metal pole that was pierced by the shrapnel as this stuff went flying all around here. The side of that reinforced, sadly a reinforced kindergarten, is all flecked with shrapnel from that mortar. And that is what all of this back and forth is response to. Islamic Jihad has claimed responsibility, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Hamas will ultimately be held responsible. Guys, back to you in New York.
Yep, they
usually are, right?
That's right. Thank you very much, Mike. Appreciate it. Well, let's bring in Ben Shapiro. He's the editor-in-chief of the Daily Wire, syndicated columnist, and the host of the Ben Shapiro Show. And he joins us live on the couch.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you, too.
Thank you.
So to talk about violence in that area is not unique. The Iron Dome activated. What's the message there?
Well, I mean, look, again, peaceful Palestinians firing peaceful mortars at Israelis in kindergartens. And yesterday there was an attempt to breach the border in Gaza again by Palestinians who were trying to break through with bolt cutters, with knives and incendiaries in an attempt to break through and kill Israelis. And this is why the media bias has been so egregious, particularly from other networks like CNN, MSNBC on the Israeli issue, demonstrating once again that all of their coverage in the last couple of weeks after the movement of the embassy to Jerusalem was just a lie. The idea that Hamas was not promoting violence at the border and that this was all peaceful protests and Israelis were firing indiscriminately into crowds, it's just nonsense. And every single day, Hamas is just demonstrating that it is a terrorist group and it is acting as terrorist groups do.
Yeah, what is it about that coverage that they can't identify what Hamas does with innocents? That they are a terrorist, it's a terrorist-controlled
It's
area.
unbelievable. It really is, because it's not even as though Hamas is attempting to hide the ball. I mean, during that actual conflagration, there was a top member of Hamas who went on television and said virtually everyone who was killed was a terrorist, and the media kept reporting it as though Israel was firing indiscriminately into crowds. If that isn't actual fake news, I'm not sure what is.
Meanwhile, they're using children as shields. They're using their own kids and taught to do that. It's ridiculous. Let's talk about more media bias, because there was a CNN reporter and a lot of reporters out there that were tweeting out or putting on social media that picture, the image of children in cages, immigrant children, and blaming President Trump for that. It turns out those pictures were taken when President Obama was in office. So some of these reporters were taking down the pictures. There's the picture right there. And we asked Kellyanne Conway about it earlier. This is what she had to say.
This is actually the CNN fight she had on that same thing, because they're accusing the president of separating families at the border. That's a policy that was already in place, and they're looking at ending this. So here's these kids. Listen.
Why did a CNN reporter retweet that false fake tweet about the migrant children being in cages? Why did your CNN colleague retweeted 2 migrant children, I suppose, laying in a cage to make the point against this president? It happened under President Obama's watch, and then deleted the tweet because it didn't fit the narrative.
You saw this exchange all night with celebrities forwarding this tweet.
There's a former member of the Obama administration who'd actually put out the tweet as well, and then had to delete the tweet after realizing that it was his administration that had done it. Again, not surprising. It's as though President Trump has somehow become the earworm from Wrath of Khan that's gotten into the media's brain, into the Democrat brain, and it's completely warped them, because it is so obvious that this has been a problem going all the way back to the Obama administration. He's not wrong when the president suggests that it's not as though he has a choice about separating parents from children. If he actually wants to arrest illegal immigrants at the border, there is no choice because the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled that he has to separate children from their parents. He can't keep the kids with their parents in detention. That's the problem. If the Democrats wanted to solve on this, if they want a solution on this, they could get one tomorrow. They don't want a solution on this because they do want these pictures. They want more of these pictures. They want more kids who are in a problematic situation like this so that they can blame President Trump and then claim that it's his cruelty that's the cause of all
Good
of this.
for her, though, for calling out that reporter and saying, what are you doing over there? If you're going to lie, I want you to explain why you're doing this. And the reporter didn't have any answer.
Well, I'm not sure CNN has any answers about its bias with regard to President Trump.
Nope, they've been exposed. Ben, we got to get, there's a new talking point from the left as well. A couple of representatives saying that Republicans that support this president, they're bums. Listen.
At the end of the day, there's only one remedy for that, and that is you need to throw the bums out. As long as there's a majority in Congress that is willing to do this president's will, and as long as we have a deeply unethical president, there's only one remedy.
Well, I think Ranking Member Schiff's point is that if they are not willing to be open to having their minds changed about holding the president accountable, then their seats are going to have to be changed. You're actually worse than bums if you're not willing to stand up to a president. I think people are pretty fed up, and they want to see people to start to stand up to the president.
So he's telling the Republicans how they should act with the Republican president. Rather than put their agenda, tell me what you're doing.
Well, I do love that Adam Schiff, who's actually set up a pup tent at media centers. I mean, he doesn't even go to Congress anymore. He just sits there in the green room, and he actually has food brought to him by
the
box
numbers
load.
are by the hundreds of his appearances.
It's unbelievable. And then he's the one who's calling the Republicans bums for actually attempting to get legislations on a variety of issues. The problem for Democrats is that really all they have in 2018 is how much they hate President Trump. They do not have an agenda. They've fallen into the politics of intersectional identity politics. It's all nasty stuff. And there's a reason that the generic ballot lead has shrunk in the average polls from 13 points down to about 3. The momentum is not on their side. That blue wave looks like it's barely going to be a ripple at this point.
Ben, would you also say, too, that they can't get past another program? They have a program. They think it's going to be health care. If you look at the studies, the average American, Republican or Democrat, cares most about health care because it's in tatters. We're in between programs, and the one that was not working starts to fray. And they want to move forward with the leadership, like Schumer and Pelosi are going, stop talking impeachment, stop talking Russia. But nobody else is even listening to their own leadership.
Well, they're stuck with their base, and their base right now is so adamant that Trump is an illegitimate president and that it must have been Russian collusion, that something must have happened to have caused all of this, that there's going to be some deus ex machina, something's going to come in from the sky and save them from President Trump, that all they can do at this point is talk impeachment and Republicans are bums, because if they actually start proposing policy, well, that would mean they're normalizing the president by actually having normal policy discussions.
And then when they talk about health care, Brian, your point, they talk about health care for all for free.
Right. It's Bernie Sanders pie in the
Single
sky.
payer, yeah, single payer.
It's out of control.
Right.
All right, Ben, thank you so much.
Hey, good to see you.
You're so smart.
Great to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right, she has never said that to me.
Nope.
Am I right, Jillian? Have
You
ever
are right. You are absolutely right. Yes. Good morning to you. Good morning, Ben. Good morning to you at home. Let's get you caught up on some of your headlines that we're following. Starting with this, he killed a police officer in cold blood, but now he's suing New York City for not protecting him in prison. Demetrius Blackwell claims he was jumped last year by 2 inmates and suffered a deep cut on his face. His suit against the city's corrections department claims prison staff did nothing to stop it. Blackwell is serving life without parole for killing Officer Brian Moore in 2015. No comment from the department. The freed American prisoner held in Venezuela for 2 years gets a hero's welcome home. Josh Holt's grandmother draping the American flag over his shoulders as the crowd sang the national anthem at the Salt Lake City airport. Holt and his wife were accused of stockpiling weapons after he flew to Venezuela to marry her in 2016. The father of the toddler saved after dangling from a balcony left the kid alone to play Pokemon Go. That little boy rescued by a real-life Spider-Man who scaled the building in Paris. The father now accused of neglect and could be going to jail. As for Spider-Man, he's an immigrant from Mali who's been offered French citizenship and a job as a firefighter.
He's unbelievable, and we were wondering why the other people weren't helping the baby up.
I don't think
apparently
they
there's
could
like a
reach.
partition, and they were holding the baby. Spider-Man comes up and rescues the kid.
I love how he's
And
called
where
Spider-Man.
the dad was playing Pokemon.
Pokemon Go.
Oh, wow. All right, 17 minutes before the top of the hour. Thanks, Jillian. In just a few hours, thousands of Starbucks will close nationwide for racial bias training. We are live outside the cafe that started it all.
Welcome back. Well, you're going to have to find another place to get your coffee this afternoon. Starbucks closing thousands of stores nationwide for implicit racial bias training.
Implicit?
Is it implicit?
I think it's unconscious.
Unconscious?
Yeah, it comes after that viral video out of a Philadelphia store last month.
And that is where we find Lauren Johnson from our Fox affiliate in Philly. Good morning, Lauren. What's the latest?
Hello, good morning from Philadelphia, Ainsley, Pete, and Brian. So about an hour ago, maybe a little bit longer, we saw some higher ups from Starbucks enter the store right here at 18th and Spruce, as you mentioned, and that's likely going to be the scene at store locations all across the country as they prepare to close its doors later this afternoon. You remember how it all started, that viral video, 2 black men arriving at this location for a business meeting. Not long after walking through the doors, police were called. The men were handcuffed. They were hauled off to jail. The community was outraged. Protests followed. Then apologies came from the leaders of Starbucks and the city of Philadelphia as they met with the men. But then they reached out to activists and experts in bias training, Starbucks did, to put together a program for its 175,000 employees. So this afternoon, 8,000 stores will cut off the coffee makers for training.
The work will grow to reflect the realities of our abilities, ethnicities, gender identities and expressions, sexual identities, class, language, citizenship, political views, religious affiliations, and more.
So according to that video previewing the training, there will be recorded remarks from Starbucks executives. There's some other rappers and activists that are in there. From there, employees will move into a real and honest exploration of bias where they can have some discussions in some pretty small, tight-knit groups. The meetings are closed to the public, including closed to the media. They say they want to preserve what's intended to happen inside those meetings. Pete, Brian, and Ainsley.
Yeah, and then where you go from here and the standard they're going to be held to, I don't know if, where it's going to go. All right, thanks so much.
Thank you, Lauren.
Appreciate it. Well, moving on, this American flag is flying high, that one right there, in a town called Independence. But the council, great name, tried taking the flag down.
What?
But one veteran is using his own money to keep it flying. That proud American joins us live next.
But first, it's my privilege to say hi, Sandra, and learn what you have scheduled for the next 2 hours.
Pete, Brian, and Ainsley, good morning to you all. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo set to deliver remarks at the State Department on religious freedom. That's happening just moments from now, and we'll be monitoring all that for you. Plus, new hope for the Trump-Kim summit. The White House now saying it still could be on. And President Trump set to rally in Tennessee tonight, where a crucial Senate race looms. Trump loyalist and Republican candidate Marsha Blackburn is here. Join us live in America's Newsroom, top of the hour.
An American flag flying high in the center of Independence, Iowa this Memorial Day. That after the city council voted to take it down because maintenance on the Stars and Stripes is too expensive.
One veteran sacrificing hundreds of his own dollars to keep that flag flying. But the fight not over yet.
That Korean War veteran Bill Coulter and his daughter Carol join us right now. Bill, first off, when did you first get word that they wanted to take this flag down?
Excuse me.
It's okay.
I read it in the council news, and then I sat and waited a week for somebody to step forward. Nobody came forward, so I signed up to get upon the council agenda, and I went as an individual representing all veterans. And when I got there, the commanders of both posts were there with the support team.
And so, Bill, you've spent your own money to make sure a flag flew yesterday on Memorial Day. But otherwise, is the city saying it's just too expensive to maintain this flag that's on public ground?
That is what they're saying, that flag and the sign out there that says, welcome to Independence, is too expensive to operate. And I went, excuse me?
No, go ahead.
No, you were doing great.
I went to REC to find out what the bill was. It's $10 a month.
Ridiculous. Then they won't show. They won't put
is
that money up.
absolutely correct.
That is insane. So so you had to put out the money, and they'll keep that up as long as you do it. Will the city council get another vote at this?
We are going to present a proposal to the city council tonight of what we want, because we want to get the city out of this altogether and do it with private funding.
And you've already got, I believe it says 4 individuals have bought flags to do that. Bill, obviously the flag means a lot to you and people in Independence. Tell us just a little bit about your service in Korea.
That is correct. What my unit done was all long-range surveillance with converted B-29s.
Wow.
And
what a patriotic
we were
family.
In and out. Our home base in the 50s was Hickam Field, where we flew out of 60 days here, 60 days there. I have seen an awful lot of the South Pacific and Korea.
Wow. And Bill, thanks so much for your service. Thanks for taking action. We appreciate highlighting your story. Good job. His brother served in World War II, and his grandson served in Iraq and Afghanistan. More of Fox and Friends in just a moment.